Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for joining us for our program, Publishing Pathways. My name is Helen Liu, and I'm the Programming and Partnerships Manager at Cary Library. Before we begin, I'd like to thank the Cary Library Foundation. Their support enables us to bring programs like tonight's event to you. This program is being recorded and will be posted to the library's YouTube channel. If you have any questions for Gabrielle, please put them into the Q&A and she'll answer them at the end of the program. Now I'd like to introduce our guest. Gabrielle Esposito holds a degree in creative writing from SUNY Geneseo. Her short stories have appeared in esteemed publications such as the Manhattan Review, 34th Parallel, and Gandy Dancer, among others. Notably, her story, The Way Home, earned second place in the 2023 Doro Boehme Fiction Editors Prize and was nominated for the 2024 Best American Short Stories Anthology. In addition to her writing, Gabrielle is a library director based in the Hudson Valley region of New York. She dedicates her free time to teaching writing workshops at local libraries and editing manuscripts for talented authors. Welcome back, Gabrielle. We are so excited to have you. If you missed it, Gabrielle also presented a program on Unlock Your Memory, which was a memoir writing class. That is also on our YouTube channel. And I will also include that link along with the link to this recording in the recap, just in case you wanted to go back and watch that as well. Now I'm going to pass the mic to Gabrielle. Thanks,
Awesome.
Gabrielle.
Thank you so much, Helen. Thank you so much for having me, Cary Library. So wonderful to see you all in the chat here tonight. I really appreciate you joining and being a part of this webinar. So this is Published Pathways. This is one of my favorite classes to teach because often a lot of writers are left with the question of how does one get published? You know, we see all these wonderful books on the shelves and at our libraries and in our bookstores. And that's the question that we kind of ask ourselves the most often. You know, what are we writing for and how do we get it out to other readers? So today's goal is not to convince you that there's one correct way to get published. We're going to talk about a lot of different publishing opportunities out there. We're going to kind of map out the major publishing pathways that exist right now and talk honestly about what each one offers and what it doesn't, so that when the opportunity comes up to publish, you can make the best choice for your piece of work. Publishing is confusing largely because writers are shown, you know, those outcomes, but not the processes. So again, we see that finished book on the shelf, but we don't see the years of submissions, the revisions, the stalled projects, or changes in directions that led there. So this class is about making those invisible steps visible. I'm going to talk a lot at you tonight, but you know, please feel free to put your questions in the chat as they come up. I'll try to address them towards the end, or if a good opportunity arises, I'll try to address it in the moment there. So let's get started. So that's me on a really great hair day. Like Helen said, my name is Gabrielle Esposito. I come to this topic wearing a few different hats. I am a writer who has submitted work, faced rejection, revised projects, and navigated uncertainty myself. It's very true that I've received an acceptance for a story and a rejection for the same story in the very same day, right? So I know about the ups and downs that it takes in the publishing industry. I'm also an editor and a library director, which means that I've seen publishing from the institutional side, like how books are selected, purchased, categorized, and circulated. So that combination has taught me that publishing is less about talent alone and more about understanding the systems kind of built around publishing, right? So once you understand the system that you're entering, you can make smarter, less discouraging choices. So you wrote a thing, now what? If you're here, you've already done something important, right? You've written. That may sound obvious, but it absolutely matters. Publishing advice often skips past this step and assumes a finished, polished project already exists. So today, or tonight rather, we'll work from the assumption that you have something like a poem, a story, an essay, or even a book, and that you're trying to figure out what to do next, not someday. So this is where many writers get stuck. Finishing a piece brings that sense of accomplishment, right? That rush of joy, but it also creates pressure. Like, what am I supposed to do with this? So instead of asking, how do I get published, it's more useful to ask, what kind of publishing process does this piece belong to? And different forms of writing move through entirely different pipelines, and confusion often comes up when you're trying to force work into the wrong one. So we're going to start from smallest to largest kind of publishing opportunities that are out there. So, if you wrote a poem, short story, or an essay, literary magazines are a wonderful place for you to start. So, short form work like those poems, short stories, those essays usually enters the publishing world through literary magazines. These can be print or online, well known or very small magazines, paid or unpaid. What they have in common is that they publish individual pieces of writing rather than those full length books. So again, it's like a periodical. Every one is kind of different, and they sometimes they have themes, sometimes they don't, and that's the wonderful thing about literary magazines. They're really kind of a mixed bag. A really famous example of a literary magazine is, of course, The New Yorker, The Atlantic as well. Um, but literary magazines are typically, or most commonly, the first place that many writers encounter formal publishing, and it's a really foundational achievement to appear in a literary magazine. So literary magazines do several important things and offer, different opportunities for writers just entering the publishing realm. So first, they help you build a record of publication, which shows editors and agents that your work has already been vetted and is publishable and that it's something that someone wants to read. They also teach you how submissions work. So typically, when you go to a literary magazine submission page, they will have very clearly listed their reading guidelines, how to format your work properly, how to track the responses, and handling rejection, of course, right? Because, of course, we all want that exception. But, rejection is part of the publishing industry. So when you get that exception, it's wonderful. And when you get that rejection, it's an opportunity to learn and to grow. And literary magazines allow you to do all of that on a very small scale, which is wonderful. So it's a really wonderful way to learn about the publishing process. The more literary magazines you look at and submit to, the more you'll get an idea of what the publishing industry is like right now. Literary magazines are typically published quarterly or twice annually. So they give a really nice real world snapshot of what folks are reading now, what folks are interested in. So, just for example, I've noticed that since I've started to write, the acceptable word count for short stories has shrunken from 5,000 words maximum to 2,500 words for literary magazines. This has to do with people's attention spans, perhaps, or even the fact that most literary magazines are online now, that folks are reading on their phones. So that, for example, just tells me that if I want to be marketable, I can write shorter content, right? Financial accessibility is, of course, a wonderful lure to literary magazines. Most literary magazines have no or some fee associated with submissions. Typically, general submissions can cost anywhere from $3 to $15, with writing competitions ranging from $20 to $30, depending on the contest. Literary magazines often host those contests, which means that you might be a prize winner of some kind of competition, which is really wonderful, again, for that credibility builder. When you compare this cost to potential fees associated with something like self-publishing, it's obviously significantly less, which again just kind of builds on that idea that literary magazines can be really foundational for your writing credentials. Equally important, literary magazines help you understand where your writing fits stylistically, right? So if I'm submitting to philosophical literary journals or something like that, but I keep getting rejections, right? But I submit to a literary magazine that focuses more on feminine writings or something like that, and I'm, getting accepted to those magazines, that pattern that emerges, right? Those acceptances versus rejections tells me where my writing fits, right? And so certain journals responding to your work while others don't, those patterns and that information is really valuable for you down the line when you're trying to figure out potentially on a larger scale where your work is going to fit in the publishing marketplace, right? And that's kind of what tonight is all about, just trying to find where your writing fits in that marketplace. So that's if you have a poem, short story, or an essay. So let's talk about self-publishing. In the corner there, it says if you wrote a book and want to publish quickly, we have to talk about self-publishing. Self-publishing is best understood as a publishing model. In self-publishing, the author acts as the publisher, meaning they retain ownership over their work and make all major decisions about how the book is edited, designed, priced, distributed, and marketed. Rather than selling rights to a publishing house, the author builds or assembles the publishing infrastructure themselves, either by doing the work independently or by hiring professionals. So, what makes self-publishing distinct from traditional publishers is not quality but responsibility. In this model, the author assumes both creative control and financial risk. There is no acquisitions process, no external gatekeeper deciding whether a book is worthy of publication. Instead, the market, which becomes your readers, the algorithms, reviews, and word of mouth, becomes the primary filter. This shifts power towards the author, but it also requires strategic thinking and certainly long-term planning on the writer's end. Self-publishing also kind of reframes what success looks like. So rather than competing for limited debut slots or institutional validation like with traditional publishing, authors focus on reach, sustainability, and direct connection with readers. Success may mean steady sales over time rather than a single high profile launch. So, for some writers, this model supports creative freedom and consistency, and for others, it offers a way to test ideas, build an audience, and maintain control over niche or experimental work. So it's important to understand that self-publishing is not that one single pathway, right? So there are multiple approaches, platforms, and levels of investment ranging from minimal cost ebook releases to professionally produced print editions with wide distribution. And there's no central authority, so authors must decide on the level of quality, reach, and financial commitment, and how that kind of aligns with your goals there. So you'll see that I have a couple different companies and have kind of broken it down into several different umbrellas there. So like we said, you can kind of go low investment to the ebook side, or you can invest in those high quality print editions of your work when we're talking about self-publishing, right? How to get your work out there autonomously. So we can't talk about ebook distribution without talking about Amazon KDP. And Apple Books and Google Books and everything like that. Ebook publishing is so popular, of course, because it is that low cost kind of investment, and it's also talking about visibility and access to those digital readers, which in theory gives us a larger market to pull from when we're trying to market our book. So Amazon KDP dominates the ebook market, which is why so many self-published authors start there. It offers fast publication, relatively high royalties, and powerful discoverability through Amazon's recommendation algorithms, and it works especially well for genre fiction. Just a word of caution, just as we're kind of talking this through. If you publish through Amazon, right, enrolling in Kindle Unlimited requires that exclusivity, which means your ebook can't be sold elsewhere, which means that a platform like Apple Books or Google Play Books might be off the table for you, which kind of limits your reach beyond Amazon. Apple Books and Google Play Books are less popular than Amazon, but kind of offer those strong alternatives for authors who, again, want that wider distribution without exclusively being pinned down to Amazon. So Apple Books tends to attract readers who are willing to purchase books outright rather than rely on subscriptions like they might with Amazon. And it performs particularly well for literary fiction, nonfiction, and international audiences. Google Play Books excels in global reach and pricing flexibility, allowing authors to experiment with discounts and reach readers who may not use Amazon at all. It's shocking, I know, but some people don't. So together, right, these platforms kind of allow authors to kind of build a diversified ebook presence rather than relying on that single retailer like Amazon. So that's what we're talking about when we're talking about kind of the big players in ebook. For broad distribution, we're still talking about ebooks here, but we're talking about platforms that kind of exist to simplify the publishing process for authors who want their work available elsewhere without managing those multiple dashboards. So, say you don't decide to go with Amazon KDP, but you want to put your book on Apple Books and also Google Play Books, it can be a lot for one writer to manage. So, software like Draft to Digital, which is now known as Smashwords, allows writers to upload once and distribute to a wide range of retailers, and that would include Apple Books, Kobo, Barnes& and Noble Press, and library platforms like Overdrive. So, I mentioned that I was a library director. Overdrive is a platform that we use to purchase books for Libby. If your library has Libby, we're using Overdrive and may potentially be able to see your book if you use something like Draft to Digital or Smashwords to be available for purchase. So it's especially helpful for writers who want a streamlined workflow, clean formatting, and clear reporting. Publish Drive takes a slightly different approach by charging a subscription fee to writers rather than a percentage of royalties. So, this model works well for authors with multiple titles or consistent sales since they keep 100% of their earnings. Publish Drive also has a strong international reach and analytics, making it a good option for authors focused on global markets. Both platforms are really about scale and efficiency rather than exclusivity or brand building. So if you're somebody who already has a lot of, who already has a lot of ebooks kind of going forth and would really like to streamline your process, Draft to Digital or Smashwords or Publish Drive might be something that you just want to look at rather than going exclusively with something like Amazon, Apple Books, or Google Play Books. So that kind of covers the digital umbrella, I guess you could say. Children or baby board books. Elizabeth, I think this one is going to help you next. So print platforms, you might want to go with just because it's more that physical quality of book. Platforms matter most when authors want those physical books taken seriously by those bookstores, libraries, institutions, or if you're thinking about the reader experience as well. Print is always a good thing to consider, especially with something like a board book that's something more tactile and higher quality. So Ingram Spark is widely considered the industry standard for professional print distribution. It feeds directly into Ingram's global wholesale network. So books published through Amazon Spark are easier for bookstores and libraries to order from, especially when they're marked as returnable. Ingram is having a huge moment right now because Baker and Taylor, which was the other book selling platform, also just closed its doors. So Ingram, it's not the only name in the game, but it's certainly the most prevalent. So this makes it an important platform for authors seeking legitimacy behind those online sales and again are looking for that tactile book. Lulu and BookBaby, again, also serving print and quality platforms. They serve slightly different needs. Lulu is ideal for specialty projects, like if you have a poetry collection or an art book or some kind of limited print run where format and presentation matter more than mass distribution. BookBaby offers bundled services that actually include printing, distribution, and professional support, which can appeal to authors who want guidance and are willing to kind of invest upfront. These platforms emphasize that quality and presentation, but authors still kind of need to consider, what are my distribution goals when I'm going with these platforms? Author services and control. So if you are looking for a little bit more support in the self-publishing front, you might want to look into Readsy and Blurb. These platforms exist to publish your book, but they also kind of exist to help you build it professionally. So Readsy connects authors with vetted editors, designers, formatters, and marketers, allowing writers to assemble a professional publishing team while retaining full ownership of their work. Retaining that ownership is a reason why a lot of folks go the self-publishing route. So it can be really important for people. This model gives authors maximum control and transparency, but it requires kind of a clear budget and that intentional decision making, kind of leading a team to the fruition of your book. Blurb focuses on those visually driven books. So, again, if you're somebody who's interested in publishing a book of photography or art and design heavy projects where creative control and print quality are the priority, Blurb might be a great option for you. It is not designed for mass market trade publishing, but it excels at producing those beautiful customized books. So both Readsy and Blurb support authors who care deeply about the craft presentation and the long-term ownership rather than the speed and volume, perhaps offered at different publishing platforms like Amazon or Draft to Digital or something like that. Beautiful. All right. So, talking about absolutely, Elizabeth. So talking about self-publishing still, I put in this slide about ISBMs just because it's something that you would absolutely encounter in the self-publishing vein, but I think it's not too well known until you actually take that leap. So an ISBN is a unique 13-digit identifier assigned to a book that specifies its edition, format, and publisher. And it functions as a universal tracking number, allowing bookstores, libraries, distributors, and readers to accurately find, order, and catalog a specific title. Each format of a book, such as hardcover, paperback, ebook, or audiobook, requires its own ISBN. So again, it's that professional identity within the publishing ecosystem. It places your title into global databases, right? And it makes them discoverable and visible. Many bookstores and distributors, including major retailers like Amazon and Barnes& and Noble, require an ISBN in order to sell or list a book. So you're really going to want to invest in one as a self-published author so that you can distribute your book. It also allows you to accurately track sales, which is essential for authors who want to understand their performance or present themselves professionally within the industry. So in the United States, ISBN are purchased through Bowker, Bowker. That's the official ISBN agency. Other countries have their own issuing organizations. You can buy a single ISBN or purchase them, I think, in bundles of 10. Don't quote me on that, which is a little bit more cost effective. Um, if you have multiple formats or if you think that you have some future titles planned. Many self-publishing platforms such as Amazon KDP and Ingram Spark offer free ISBNs, but I just want to offer you a word of caution with those. So free ISBNs absolutely save money, they simplify the setup, but the platform providing it will be listed as the publisher of record. So this might limit credibility in certain markets and restrict flexibility if the author later wants to distribute the book elsewhere. So again, we said if you publish your ebook on Amazon, you can't distribute it to Apple Books or Google Play Books. The ISBN being owned by Amazon would be an instance where you would have issues distributing your book to a farther reaching platform. Um, so those free ISBNs can't be transferred in between those platforms. So purchasing and owning your ISBN allows you to list yourself or your imprint as the publisher, which gives you greater control, consistency, and professionalism across those distribution channels. So again, I mentioned that you would need kind of a new ISBN for each edition or format of a book. That doesn't pertain to minor edits or cover changes. That doesn't normally require a new ISBN. Substantial revisions or new additions would. Understanding when and how ISBNs are used kind of empowers you to make those strategic decisions about distribution, branding, and those long-term publishing goals. So it's just kind of essential to kind of navigate that publishing landscape. I am not sure what the rough order of magnitude cost for ISBNs is. I'm sorry, I didn't look it up before we started. But if you're curious, again, it's Bowker. It's a fairly navigatable website. Maybe we can drop the link in at the end if we have some time. Um, Perfect. So is self-publishing worth it? That's normally the next question that kind of comes up when folks are considering this pathway. And I'd like to think, oh, thank you so much, Sam. that there are pros and cons to every one of these paths that we're going to look at tonight. So for many writers, right, the answer is yes. You're kind of if you understand what you're gaining, kind of what you're taking on, self-publishing is absolutely worth it. Self-publishing offers a level of autonomy that simply doesn't exist in traditional publishing. And for some authors, that freedom, right, and the power of creativity is the entire point as to why they started writing in the first place. So again, first up, we have control, right? Traditional publishers have brands, markets, and expectations, and they often shape a book to fit those priorities. I'll say it a couple times during this webinar, but my first instance of this phrase is that traditional publishers are businesses, right? So they want to kind of make your work fit their business model. So that's just something to consider. As a self-published author, your work remains yours, right? So your voice, your characters, your narrative choices are not filtered through a traditional publishing committee or altered to match a publishing trend. What readers receive is the book that you intended to write. Speed is, of course, another major benefit. Traditional publishing operates on really long timelines, so you're often looking about 2 years or more between acceptance and release. Self-publishing allows authors to write and publish on a schedule that fits their lives and creative momentum. In the time it might take a traditional publisher to release one book, a self-published author could have released several, building that visibility, relevance, and readership along the way. Self-publishing also offers significantly higher royalties. I know we're all in it for the craft, but wouldn't it be amazing if we got paid for our work? So, on many platforms, authors can earn up to 70% of each sale as a self-published author. By comparison, traditionally published authors typically earn between 7 to 10% after their advance has been earned out, which is a milestone that many writers never reach. So while traditional publishing does offer those advances are paid against future earnings, meaning authors don't see those additional royalties until that amount is recouped in sales. Creative freedom extends beyond a single book as well. So if a sequel, series, or spin-off kind of emerges, right, self-published authors can just pursue that subplot immediately. Traditionally published authors usually need approval before continuing or expanding a project, which can limit both creative and financial opportunities. So, those self-published authors retain again those full ownerships and copyrights. Um, Sorry, I think I lost my place in my notes. Hang on. Okay. So again, we have that creativity. It's full ownership and copyright of their work, maintaining those long-term controls over their work as well. Ownership, right? You own 100% of your work. Nothing gets changed again to fit that business, and that is again exactly what a lot of writers are looking for. Um, so again, the challenges, we've got those upfront costs there, of course. That can include editing, cover design, formatting, and marketing as well. Self-published authors also carry the full weight of promotion and distribution, which requires time, strategy, and persistence. And additionally, self-published books may have limited access to bookstores, libraries, or industry recognition compared to traditionally published titles. Those traditional publishers have been making connections for years and years and years, whereas you are just entering the publishing industry now. So they have pipelines that you might not even know about or have access to. So I think the biggest thing with the challenges that I just want to point out is that on top of trying to manage your everyday life and, also perhaps continue writing. You're trying to learn a lot of different new skills potentially as well. So again, it's that editing, it's that formatting, marketing, right? You have to be a marketing major now and figure out, how to promote and distribute your work. It can be a huge challenge, for a lot of self-published authors. So just to kind of put that all in perspective. So self-publishing is just one of the trade-offs, right, in the publishing industry. It offers that freedom, it offers that speed and that ownership in exchange for responsibility and risk. So for writers who value that independence and are willing to kind of approach their work as both an art and a business, it can be really empowering and a sustainable path as well. Can really ask, is self-publishing worth it given the increased oversaturation in the market? I think that's kind of a subjective question, and it depends on your goals. I always think of there are lots of success stories with self-publishing, and lots of different ways to do it as well. So, if it's something that you feel strongly about, given the creative freedom and again that time, making those higher royalties, having the work be 100% yours. I think it's worth going down the rabbit hole and just kind of seeing what happens and potentially picking up those new skills and learning it along the way. But we'll talk more about writing goals towards the end. So I don't know if I have a great answer for your question, but I'll think about it. Feel free to put any other questions about self-publishing in the chat. We're going to move on to traditional publishing. Traditional publishing, at its core, is a business arrangement between an author and a publishing house. So, in this model, a publisher acquires the rights to a manuscript for a specific period of time and in specific formats, such as print, ebook, or audiobook. These rights are negotiated in the contract, and while authors retain copyright, the publisher controls how the book is produced and distributed during the term of the agreement. When a book is required, the author is typically paid in advance. So this advance can vary widely, right? It may be modest or substantial, but it's important to understand that it's not a bonus. An advance is an advance against future royalties, meaning the author does not earn additional royalty payments until the book has sold enough copies to earn out that additional amount. Many books never earn out, which is a normal and expected outcome in traditional publishing. One of the defining features of traditional publishing is that the publisher covers the major production costs. So this includes professional editing, cover design, interior layout, printing, distribution, and marketing. Because the publisher is investing financially in the book, they also have significant influence over decisions related to the book's presentation, pricing, and release timeline because they are a business. So in this model, the publisher assumes the financial risk. If the book does not sell well, the author is now required to repay the advance. The publisher absorbs the loss, which is one reason they are selective about the manuscripts they acquire. They are taking kind of a business investment in your work. So depending on how that all shakes out, they may choose to reinvest or they may choose to not. That selectivity is not a judgment of quality alone. It's a calculation about market fit, timing, and projected sales. It's a really complicated business. So after the advances earn out, the author begins earning royalties on each copy sold. These royalties are typically a smaller percentage than what authors earn through self-publishing, but they are part of a system that prioritizes scale, distribution, and institutional access over speed and control. So again, traditional marketplaces have been building these pipelines for distribution and buyers for years and years and years. So understanding this trade-off just kind of helps you decide whether traditional publishing aligns with your goals at a given stage in your career. So when we're talking about traditional publishing, we're often referring directly or indirectly to the big five publishing houses, and they're listed on that slide. The big five are the largest trade publishers in the English-speaking world, and they control a significant portion of the commercial book market. These companies are Penguin Random House, HarperCollins, Simon & Schuster, Hachette Book Group, and Macmillan. While there are many other publishers operating today, the Big Five dominates in terms of revenue, distribution power, bookstore placement, and cultural visibility. Each of these companies functions as a parent corporation overseeing dozens, sometimes hundreds of smaller imprints. These imprints act like specialized publishing houses within the larger market, focusing on particular genres, audiences, or editorial tastes. So, for example, one imprint might focus on literary fiction, another on commercial romance, another on nonfiction or children's books. This structure allows the Big Five to publish a wide range of material while maintaining distinct brands and market niches, all under a single corporate umbrella. What the Big Five offer primarily is scale, and that's kind of why they're so enticing to a lot of different writers. They have long-standing relationships with major retailers, distributors, libraries, and international markets. They have been building these relationships for years. This means they can place books in national bookstore chains, negotiate prominent display space, secure reviews in major publications, and distribute books globally. Their marketing and publicity teams have access to media channels and institutional pathways that are difficult, if not impossible, for those smaller presses or even individual authors to replicate on their own. They have hundreds to thousands of people working for them. The big five have also cornered much of the market through consolidation. So, over the past several decades, publishing has undergone repeated mergers and acquisitions, with smaller publishers absorbed into those larger corporations. This consolidation has reduced competition at the top of the industry, concentrating power among fewer decision makers, which is why we've got something like the Big Five. So, as a result, a relatively small number of editors and executives now determine which books receive the largest advances, widest distribution, and most visible marketable marketing support. Another way the Big Five maintain influence is through risk distribution. They publish a large number of books each year, knowing that only a small percentage will become major commercial successes. Bestsellers subsidize quieter or riskier titles, allowing publishers to balance profitability against their lists. So while those bestsellers are taking the top spots, they're also the reasons why those publishers kind of feel comfortable taking those risks on those debut authors. Um, that said, it does kind of encourage caution, right? So, because the stakes are high, publishers tend to favor those projects that they can believe in because they'll reach those larger audience or align with those proven market trends, right? Romantasy is a super hot topic right now. So, publishers are looking at it and they're putting out a lot of it because it's selling right now. For writers, this means that getting published by a big five house is not simply about the quality of the manuscript. Sometimes you could be the best writer in the world, but it's just not happening right now because of timing, category fit, market conditions, and whether a book can be positioned within an existing sales framework because they are a business. So the big five are not talent scouts in the romantic sense. They are those large scale content distributors operating within tight economic constraints. So this, I share this all with you in the hopes that it kind of demystifies traditional publishing, right? These companies are powerful, they are influential, and they're capable of launching books on a massive scale. But they are also limited by market pressures and corporate priorities. Seeing them kind of allows us to make those, again, those informed decisions about, is this system aligning with our goals or is this a publishing path that might serve their work better at a different kind of time? So again, when we're talking about kind of that traditional publishing landscape and why it's so difficult to break into, it's kind of important to understand that there are systems that are sitting between the writers and the readers under that umbrella of traditional publishing. So it operates through multiple layers of gatekeeping, right? So on the ground level, you've kind of got those literary agents, right? That's like the first barrier to entry for self-publishing, right? If you get a literary agent, you're kind of on the up and up. And then you've got, the editors that work for the publishing companies. And then you have acquisitions committees, which kind of make the final decisions. And each layer exists to manage risk and volume, not necessarily to discourage writers, but together they significantly narrow the number of manuscripts that move forward. So by the time a book reaches an acquisitions committee, it has already passed through several filters, each shaped by those market expectations and internal priorities. Another key factor to kind of keep in mind is the limited number of debut slots available each year. Large publishers release many books, but only a small portion of those are debuts, and an even smaller portion receive meaningful market support. Publishers often prioritize established authors because they offer those more predictable returns. You'll hear librarians gripe about the number of James Patterson books that come out per year. Those publishers are cranking them out because they know that he sells. They know that we'll buy his book, and so will a bunch of other people in a bunch of other bookstores. He's predictable. So this means that new writers are not competing against all books ever written, right? They're competing for a very small number of available entry points in any given season. Economic realities play a major role in these decisions. Most traditional published books do not earn out their full advances, and publishers know this. Because they operate on a model where a few successful titles must subsidize the quieter ones, publishers tend to favor projects that they believe can perform well commercially or fill a specific market niche. This doesn't mean that unconventional or literary books aren't published. It just means that the margin for risk is narrow. Industry consolidation has further intensified this competition. So again, we talked about those mergers, those fewer companies sharing a larger portion of the market. Fewer decision makers at the top means the opportunities hasn't grown at the same pace as the number of writers seeking publication. So the result is more competition concentrated within fewer pipelines. And finally, traditional publishing holds significantly uh, cultural influence, right? So major publishers shape which books are reviewed in prominent outlets, considered for awards, and placed predominantly in bookstores and libraries. Visibility is not distributed evenly, it's kind of curated. So this influence reinforces existing hierarchies and determines which books are kind of seen as important, regardless of how many books exist outside the system. Um, so it's less about the sheer number of books being written and more about access, right, to distribution, to legitimacy, and to visibility. I just want to stress that, if you're trying to break in traditional publishing and you find it really difficult, it is not a personal rejection. It's really just a reflection of how tightly controlled systems kind of allocate opportunities when it comes to traditional publishing. Feel free to drop any questions that you have about that whole lecture that I just gave in the chat about traditional publishing. Um, but let's say, even after all that, you still want to give your writing the best chance to break into traditional publishing, right? And because we know the landscape, because we know that background information, we can kind of use that to help us along, right? So when it comes to getting a book noticed by traditional publishers, the first question that you should kind of ask yourself is, where does this book belong? Traditional publishing, right, isn't looking for that raw talent alone. It's looking for projects that can clearly fit into a market category. So a book that feels unique or unclassifiable may be brilliant, but without a defined market, it kind of struggles to move past the earliest filters. A strong market means a few things. So, first, your book should be immediately describable in one sentence that places it on a shelf. If someone can instantly understand the category, the book becomes harder to pitch and harder to acquire. Second, you should be able to name kind of five recent comparable titles published in the last 3 to 5 years to show there is a reader base for this kind of story. These comps signal to editors and acquisitions team that your project is viable. Traditional publishers acquire projects, not writers necessarily. So until a project demonstrates a clear market opportunity, nothing else like social media presence, agent representation, or personal brand really matters. So the reality kind of is that a well-defined market fit is the foundation on which every other step of the publishing process is built. So you really kind of want to think about where your piece belongs before you kind of start poking at the traditional publishing bubble. All right. So submission materials. Many writers think of query letters, synopses, and proposals as busy work, which is kind of like a hurdle to jump over before the real work of writing begins. But in reality, these materials are one of the first ways the publishing industry evaluates a project. So they're designed to kind of test clarity. Do you truly understand your own book? And do you understand the market that it's entering? So the submission packet is what would ideally go. We talked about gatekeepers earlier. The submission packet is what would most likely go to a literary agent. Literary agents are kind of the champions of new writers. Um, they're kind of that first level of gatekeeping that we're talking about. So they kind of, they know the traditional publishing market really well. They know where different works fit. So if you're looking to get into traditional publishing, finding a literary agent and submitting that professional submission packet would be a really great step. And acquiring one would be even better, to kind of break into the traditional publishing, because they would kind of circulate your work in those traditional publishing funnels, and hopefully someone might pick it up. So, strong submission materials doesn't rely on hope or hype or overselling your work. It doesn't promise that your book will change the world or redefine the genre. Instead, your submission materials explain succinctly and precisely what the project is, where it fits, and of course, why it matters. So, editors and agents are looking for confidence and comprehension, not enthusiasm alone. So for fiction, you should have a fully polished manuscript. Most literary agents will most likely only take the first 50 pages or so, so you can absolutely make sure your first 50 pages are amazing. But I really think that the full manuscript should be published before you kind of start submitting it. You want to be mindful of everyone's time. A query letter that proves market awareness. So again, we mentioned thinking about other different genres and things like that, or different callbacks to different works and things like that within the past 3 to 5 years. Saying something like "my work echoes," um, you know, uh, I'm blanking on a book right now. But Anthony Wyer's latest work or something like that, to show that you're aware of the market and where your book fits in the market. And a synopsis as well. So kind of summarizing the entirety of your book nice and neatly. The beginning, middle, and end of your book is what a synopsis should be. For nonfiction, you could put together a proposal for your work, the work that you would like to, the research and work that you're kind of interested in, identifying that clear audience again, who is going to read this book, and the clear reason that this author is writing this book now, again, showing that cultural relevancy. So these documents that you would put together and send to those editors and agents kind of serve as your first filter. If your synopsis muddles the plot or your query fails to convey the book's category, the project may never move forward, no matter how compelling the manuscript itself is. So, in short, clarity in your submission signals that you know your story, its audience, and its place in the publishing landscape. Skills that are far more valuable than clever phrasing or persuasive rhetoric may be. Um, Children books, picture books fit for submission. Yeah, so that would absolutely be. Maureen, are you asking for specific publishing companies, or how to kind of break into traditional publishing platforms? Because you would still use a literary agent for that to kind of market your work. Feel free to respond in the chat, and I'll try to circle back to it. So again, so you have your submission packet, and it's all ready and it's all good to go. Um, Prepare as fiction. Yes. Oh, I see what you're asking. Yes, yes, you would prepare it as fiction. Yes, you're right on the money with that one. Thank you, Maureen. All right, so you have your submission packets and you're ready to go. The next step would be to query those literary agents. So this is those literary agents, and the query letter itself is kind of the real first point of contact with traditional publishing. So it is the gateway through which your manuscript begins its journey, and the gateway you use here, and the strategy that you use here can make a huge difference in whether your project advances. So querying is not random, right? You're not just looking up a bunch of different literary agents and contacting them all through email and haphazardly doing it. It requires order and it requires attention. So you want to start with agents who are actively representing your genre, those who have demonstrated interest in the type of story that you've written. There are a couple places to find literary agents. I think querytracker.com is a website. You can also flip to the back of, your favorite book, and kind of see which literary agent produced it, and maybe reach out to them, see if they're accepting work as well. Next, consider agents who have recently sold debut authors. Those agents are familiar with the market realities for first-time writers and understand how to position a new voice effectively, right? Finally, look for agents whose existing lists have room for a project like yours. Agents are really selective about what they take on, and they need to kind of see where your book fits into their current roster. Um, there are some critical missteps to avoid just to point them out, right? Again, querying hundreds of agents at once or targeting those who do not represent your category is kind of ineffective. So we just want to be mindful of everyone's time that we're reaching out to. Query is not a lottery where, the more times you do it, the more successful you'll be. It's a really professional, targeted form of outreach. So you want to treat it like you would any business pitch, right? You want to thoughtfully research who you're reaching out to. You want it to be strategically directed, and you want to be respectful, of course, of the recipient's expertise and time. Done well, that query and that submission packet is more than a letter. It is your first professional step into traditional publishing. So it's really just something to kind of think about as you go along, as kind of working your way up through the traditional publishing pipeline there. Um, so say you've been at it for 6 months, and you kind of, keep getting the thank you, but this isn't for us from literary agents. The best thing to do with those rejections, when and if they come, is to kind of take them as market feedback, right? Rejection is not a personal sign of failure, and I say this keeping rejection from literary magazines in mind, and if you go the self-publishing route but nobody's buying, or if you get all of those no's from those literary agents and traditional publishing. Essays, I just want to really drive home the idea that rejection is an inevitable part of the publishing path. So every writer, regardless of our experience or talent, encounters no multiple times before finding the right home for a project, right? I mentioned earlier, I received a yes and a no to the same story in the same day. Crazy. But it just shows you kind of what writers experience and what the market is looking for, and that it's all different, right? So what separates writers who move forward from those who get stuck is perspective, right? So rejection becomes valuable when it again reveals those patterns. So, if you receive repeated feedback from literary agents or readers or whoever about pacing, structure, characterization, or marketing position, it's not criticism aimed at discouraging you, it is information, right? And these patterns highlight areas where your manuscript may not yet align with market expectations or storytelling clarity. So, paying attention to them allows you to revise strategically, making changes that strengthen the book rather than chasing approval from every reader or gatekeeper. Writers who succeed understand that revision is a tool, not a compromise, right? So, feedback is most useful when it helps you improve the project's fit, coherence, and impact rather than kind of reshaping it to satisfy that subjective taste. In this way, rejection becomes part of that learning process, right? Guiding you towards a stronger, more polished, and ultimately more publishable work, right? We want to turn those rejections into yeses. That's the goal anyway. So, traditional publishing, is it worth it? So deciding whether that traditional publishing path is, kind of one of the most important strategic choices that a writer can make, right? So, like any decision, it kind of comes with those advantages and those real challenges, right? So, of course, one of the advantages is industry support. Traditional publishers provide a team of professionals like editors, designers, and publicists who help polish, package, and promote your book. This kind of support can elevate a manuscript beyond what a writer could achieve alone, right? So all of those that industry support that you would receive would have been, just under your own person power on the self-publishing side. So a traditional publisher would do all of that for you, and you wouldn't even have to think about it, which is glorious. Distribution is another key advantage. Again, books released through traditional publishers have access to physical bookstores, libraries, major online retailers, and that's reaching a readership that would be really difficult to tap kind of independently. So closely tied to distribution is credibility, of course, as well, right? So being published by a recognized house can signal quality and seriousness to readers, reviewers, and media outlets, which can mean all the difference in a writer's career. And of course, there's the financial investment, right? So publishers often provide advances and cover production costs, which allow writers to focus on their craft without the upfront financial burden of self-publishing. So again, with self-publishing, we're maybe still working our day jobs, right? Doing the good fight, well as traditional publishers, perhaps that advance floats you for a few months or something like that. And during that time, you write and learn and things like that. So trade-offs to both when it comes to that financial investment. Of course, there are trade-offs, right? We talked a lot about that. Writers relinquish a degree of control over aspects like cover design, marketing strategies, and sometimes even editorial decisions. So the process is really time consuming. So from submission to release, we said it could take about, months to years for a book to reach the public. Financially, royalties are again typically lower than self-publishing, meaning long-term income depends heavily on sales volume. And of course, acceptance is never guaranteed. If you're going the traditional publishing route, you're kind of in it for the long haul, right? And working your way up through those gatekeepers, starting with the literary agencies, and then going to the editors of the publishing house, and then going to that acquisitions committee, meaning there are so many points and filters to get through before the publisher kind of takes that chance, making the process really competitive for folks. So again, it really all depends on your goals as a writer. So if you value support, credibility, and those wide distribution channels and are willing to navigate the trade-offs, it can be a really highly rewarding path, especially if you want to be a career author, right? So if independent speed or higher royalties are your priority, those other avenues might serve your project better. So again, it's just understanding those both sides that kind of allow you to make informed choices that align with your vision and career strategy as well. All right, some hybrid publishing. This is something kind of new that's emerged over the past few years. I think it's really fascinating, so I threw it in there because it was something new that I learned as I was kind of building this workshop. It's called hybrid publishing, and it's exactly as it sounds, right? It's that middle ground between self-publishing and traditional publishing. In this model, the author contributes financially to the production of the book. You often cover costs like editing, design, and printing, and the result can be a professional quality book that looks and feels like a traditionally published title. So again, just want to break that down. It does require, that financial input. I've seen anywhere from five to $10,000 of investment, right? Which can be a lot for anyone truly. But it does offer that look and feel of a traditionally published book. So it's kind of interesting. Um, Unlike those traditional publishing houses, it does not provide gatekeeping. You do take on that kind of financial risk with investing in that book and those services. And it might not offer the career leverage that kind of comes with the traditional publishing route, but the value lies in that paid publishing support. So again, we talked a little bit about those other services like BookBaby or Lulu. In the self-publishing platform, where they kind of you can curate that team, right, of editors and formatters and other folks like that. So with hybrid publishing, it's kind of offering that service, right? That professional assistance, that professional team that would produce and also distribute your book. And the decision making and kind of financial responsibility remains largely with you. So it can be a really strategic choice going with a hybrid publisher for writers who want professional polish and broader distribution than self-publishing alone can provide. And it kind of works, when you have that clear expectation and realistic understanding of its limitations. I threw this slide in there because we're dealing with the internet, and so I just wanted to be very transparent. If you're curious about hybrid publishing, there are a couple different things to look for if you'd like to find a legitimate hybrid publisher. There are such thing as vanity presses, which kind of offer a different kind of they're not as selective as their work with their work and projects that they take. So I just wanted to kind of avoid that pitfall with you. So uh, a hybrid publisher it kind of sits in that gray area again between that traditional and self-publishing platform. So the authors contribute financially. The burden is on the writer to kind of evaluate potential partners carefully before committing to the project. So a reputable hybrid publisher is really selective. They do not accept every manuscript submitted to them, and they are willing to say no. I think that's where the hybrid part comes in, right? So they can say no to a project just as a traditional publisher can. Um, the selectivity matters because it signals that the publisher is making those editorial decisions based on quality and market potential rather than just kind of operating on a volume-based business model. If a company is willing to publish anything as long as the author pays, it's not hybrid publishing, it's a fee for service publishing or a vanity press, right? And those are kind of the red flags that we want to avoid because we want to make sure that we're going with a reputable publishing house in some shape, form, or fashion. Transparency is another defining characteristic of legitimate hybrid publishers. They are very clear and upfront about their costs. They break it down exactly what the author is paying for and why. This includes outlining what services are included, such as editing, design, distribution, and marketing, and what level of involvement the author can expect at each stage. So there should be no vague promises or hidden fees, and contracts should be written in plain, understandable language. Of course, if you're receiving a contract from these publishing companies, you should absolutely, seek legal counsel for any kind of document like that. I'll just throw that out there. Um, a trustworthy hybrid publisher is also explicit about rights. So authors should retain copyright, and the contract should be clearly stating which rights the publisher is licensing, for how long, and in what formats. So legitimate hybrid publishers do not require payment or overly broad right grabs, and they allow authors to exit the partnership once contractual obligations are met. So just kind of keep that in mind as well. Realistic expectations are, of course, a key marker of credibility as well. So, ethical hybrid publishers do not promise bestseller status. They don't guarantee bookstore placement or a media coverage that they cannot control. So, they kind of work to instead position themselves as partners who provide that professional support, infrastructure, and guidance while being honest about the limits of what publishing alone can accomplish. If we're talking about talking to a company who's gonna, offer you the best book on the moon, that's not possible, right? They're working within the constraints of the marketplace that the traditional publishers and self-publishers are also up against as well. So if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. Um, so, in short, legitimate hybrid publishing is defined not by the presence of fees, but by the selectivity, transparency of those fees, those fair contracts, and realistic claims. So, understanding what good looks like allows writers to, again, make those empowered decisions rather than kind of navigating the hybrid space without kind of any idea what you're getting into. Um, so again, I talked about those red flags, those vanity presses. So just to be very clear, a vanity press is a fee for service publisher. They publish anything. So again, those hybrid publishers are selective, they're transparent, and provide those professional supports in exchange for financial contribution. Vanity presses, they'll be much more vague about their marketing strategies. There's no clear sales track records as well. You want to be really cautious about their rights grabs. And again, those contracts, right? High fees with no exit clause as well. Um, so again, understanding those differences between those models just kind of, again, helps you make those informed decisions. So I just wanted to put that in there as well. All right. So which publishing pathway is right for you? We talked a lot about, what each path offers, traditional, hybrid, and self-publishing, distinct priorities and trade-offs with all of these paths. So some paths offer control, allowing you to make every decision about content, design, and marketing. Others prioritize speed, right? Getting your book into readers' hands quickly. Some provide support exclusively with professional teams to help polish and promote your work, while others maximize reach, offering broader distribution channels. Considerations of ownership, including rights and royalties, differ dramatically across the models as well. There is no single best path, right? The right choice depends on your current goals, resources, and the kind of support or control that you want over your project. For example, a debut author looking for guidance and credibility may lean more towards that traditional publishing route, whereas an experienced writer seeking full creative control and higher royalties might prefer self-publishing or even hybrid publishing, right? If they want the support and that credibility as well. So it's important to recognize as well that just because you go through one path at one time doesn't necessarily mean that you can't do something at a different time, right? So the none of these doors are closed to you regardless of where you start. Those careers evolve, and what works for one project may not be ideal for the next. So understanding kind of each of those paths just kind of helps you make that informed decision as you kind of navigate this landscape as well. Right. And so, of course, there's no linear path. How you define success is really what that looks like to you. So it might be landing that book deal, and it might also be, selling 10 copies of your self-published work. It's not a one size fit all. You have different goals, and understanding your own priorities is really essential for making those strategic decisions as well. So I think if I could leave you with anything, it would be to kind of decide what success looks like to you, what that means to you. Each publishing decision kind of becomes easier after that, right? It informs which path to pursue, how much time and energy to invest, and how to measure progress as well. So by defining your own version of success, you can focus on choices that align with your goals rather than chasing someone else's idea of what a successful writing career looks like. Um, I spoke a lot at you tonight. There's my contact information. Um, Feel free to reach out at any time. There's my website as well. I'm also going to put a link to a short survey in the chat as well. I'm always looking for feedback on how to make these writing workshops better for folks. I do these at a lot of different libraries. So feel free to respond if you have a moment. I saw that we have some questions in the Q&A. I'm gonna pull them up. All right, I'm gonna start here with Sam's first question. So, how polished should a novel submission be? How much messiness might an agent or publisher overlook because the bones of the story are good? Um, it has to be polished, as in there can be no grammatical errors, there can be no spelling errors. Um, if you're putting forth a novel submission, it should be as well constructed as it possibly can be, to your eye and to the best of your knowledge. Literary agents, there's not a lot of margin for error at all. So unfortunately, it requires a lot of work ahead of time before you even get to that novel submission phase as well. I saw you had another question here, Sam. When querying traditional publishing, how much should my presentation try to cast my work as being part of an expected niche? To what extent should I attempt to? Oh, okay. Oh, I did. Okay, thanks, Sam. Um, oh, perfect. Okay. So do literary agents often give personalized feedback about pacing, characterization, or the like? They absolutely might. So it depends on the literary agent. Some are very generous with their time and others are not. One thing that I might have should have included in this presentation is to allow as many folks as possible before you start shopping it around to literary agents, take a look at it and kind of see what they think, and kind of take their feedback and just try to help that kind of inform your writing process, or your edits moving forward. Because that's, that feedback is kind of invaluable because once it's in the literary hands, yeah, once it's in those literary agents' hands, there's nothing to do. Yeah, the difficulty is getting someone to read a whole novel. It's really true. I definitely have that thought where I was like, oh, if I record all of this, would you listen to it? I don't know what's easier because it's hard to get somebody to sit down and read like a 350-page manuscript. But I am sure that there are readers out there. We just have to find them. Um, Kimberly asks, would traditional publishing's ability to reach other countries be another pro, or is there now support for that in self-publishing? That's a great question. Traditional publishing, to my knowledge, would certainly be the I, I guess easier avenue for other countries. Oh, thank you, Lydia. Um, Self-publishing translation, not to my knowledge. If you were doing a translation in the self-publishing realm, you would have to find a translator, I would imagine. I'm not sure if software platforms like AI are doing the translations at this point, which might, again, I hate to promote AI, but might cover the cost of finding a translator or something like that. Let me know if that answered your question, Kimberly, if you'd like some more information. Um, is it true that if you self-publish, traditional publishing in the future is okay, awesome, is near impossible, or has that changed since self-publishing is becoming more popular? I think that's a really wonderful and nuanced question, and I think you've touched upon something really important. So I think this is my opinion. I don't have any data on this, but I think that since COVID has changed a lot of things in the sense that I guess there's more. I don't know if COVID is the right starting point. What I'm trying to say is that with access to the internet and more people kind of living online and things like that, um, uh, the self-publishing has kind of there's been a boom in it necessarily. Though the wonderful thing about the age of the internet, right, is that it's so accessible. Traditional publishing has become less accessible. And so I think the publishing landscape has kind of changed so much because of that, right? So self-publishing has definitely become the more popular option. What am I trying to say here, Kimberly? I'm so sorry. I'm trying to organize my thoughts for you. Traditional publishing in the future is almost, I think, a little bit more possible if you self-publish. I've seen lots of instances where lots of writers have self-published and then have gotten picked up because of the rise of social media and things like that. So they're promoting their books on Instagram. They get a bunch of Instagram followers, and that, to self-publishers that say, well, they have like 100,000 readers or so who may potentially buy this book. So I think that is to the benefit of self-publishing, I guess. So I don't think there's a trade-off if you go one route over the other. Um, I hope that answers your question. That was a very long-winded and weird way to get to the point. So if I self-publish and I like to get trad published, in the past, there were Larry of self-published authors. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, it has changed. I 100% agree with that, Kimberly. I think it's increased in credibility as well. Um, lots of I think with Amazon taking that stance on ebooks, and making it more accessible for everyone, I think it really has changed. I think it did at one point kind of not necessarily be looked down on self-published or traditional publishers, but they were absolutely leery of it. Yeah. Awesome. Helen's putting in the writers group, which is fantastic. Does anybody have any more questions?
All right, with no one has questions, I just want to thank you so much, Gabrielle, for a very comprehensive presentation. Thank you so much. I did put into the chat the next meeting for the writers group. If you'd like to join a community of writers, we get together and we go through practice prompts just to get used to kind of writing and touching upon different topics. So join us if you'd like. It will be back at the library. Thank you all for joining us tonight. Thank you for staying with us till 8:15. And thank you, Gabrielle, for answering all of these questions that we had today. And have a good evening, everyone.
Thank you so much. Have a wonderful evening. Bye.